Hello, I'm NadiaAl-Samarrie with Diabetes Health TV. Welcome to my show. Today I'm going to speak to Kevin Sayer about the next generation G7, updates on the Dexcom sampling program, data that supports type 2s being on a CGM, and the new eligibility requirements for Medicare. So stay tuned. Before we get started, don't forget to like, subscribe, and click on the icon to be notified of our next video. Welcome to my show, Kevin.
Well, thank you for having me.
So you have some new exciting updates on the G7. Tell us about it.
Well, we do. We've actually finally started disclosing a little more information about what we believe promises to be the most advanced CGM ever. I think first and foremost, the one thing Dexcom will never give up on or will never compromise on is the accuracy and performance of our product. We recently released some data on the MARD, and what that means, just for everybody listening, is the average percentage that the CGM is off versus the blood readings that it takes. The way we do these studies, and the studies in our industry are very complicated. A subject sits in a chair with diabetes and has their blood drawn like every 5 or 10 or 15 minutes, and that blood reading is then compared to what's on the continuous glucose monitor. So it takes a very long time, but the studies are also very accurate. If they're run properly, it gives a good indication of how this product's going to perform. And G7, we just released our first clinical data as to how it's going to perform. The mean average relative difference, and what that means is you're off X percent, either high or low, but it's the average either way.
Right.
They're all taken as absolute numbers. Is below 9%. It's in the 8+% range, and we think we even get better over time as we fine tune the algorithm prior to final U.S. launch.
And were
And
you,
in
Kevin, were you comparing this to the G6, or what
We
was the
compared it to
purpose of the?
G6. Yeah, we've compared it to G6 and to other sensors. We're also going to use that data set for our European filing that doesn't require as much data as a US filing requires. And, we've talked about getting approved and launched in Europe later this year. Haven't really given a US time frame yet, but a lot of that's going to depend upon stuff that we still have to execute and get done. And not only is it accurate, but it's very, very consistent. One of the things that our customers are concerned about is that one sensor that's just off the rails. There's one that doesn't work, and sometimes it happens. I mean, I've talked to parents of kids, for example. It put a sensor in their arm, and it gets to the bone, and the sensor tip bends or something, just things that are out of our control there, or sometimes in our control. Well, what we saw, the consistency of the sensor being within 15 points and 15% and 20 points and 20%. These are things that are measures that the FDA looks at. The product performed extremely well.
So it's
So we
plus
can
or
expect,
minus is the variance, right? So
yeah,
it's
yep,
okay.
plus or minus. And so we're expecting a better product than G6 when it comes to performance when all said and done here, and people have been very happy with G6.
And the
The other
new
thing,
G7 is one of the benefits, or one of the features, I should say, is that it's really small.
oh yes, it's 60% smaller
Wow,
than
that's
the current
substantial.
system, and it's about a little bigger than a nickel. If you were to compare it to a nickel,
Mhm.
it's not quite as big as a quarter. Some of the other features that are very cool, and you throw the transmitter away every time it's disposable, so you don't have to go through that. Okay, remember to take my transmitter out and put it in, and then what do I do when my transmitter runs out of battery and stuff? That's not the case anymore. We're doing it at 10-day life now to begin with, because we want to make sure and ensure reliability and accuracy for our customers.
And the 10-day
And
life is on the G7, right? Not the G6?
it's on G6. G6 is 10 days now. We're keeping 10 days. We talked about a longer life,
Mhm.
and we'll do that eventually. But for now, we're going to stick with G7 and 10 days, because we want these things to last as long as we commit to. The insertion process, everything is much smaller. So while the G6 insertion device looks very big, it's actually quite efficient. The G7 device is much smaller than that. I don't know if it's half the size, but it's pretty close. Comes in a very small box. It's a one button push. You don't have to peel tape off. You just push the button and
Wow.
go. One of the other things we did from a customer experience perspective, a lot of our customers use the overtape to make sure it stays on, and
Right.
used to have to call up and get that separate. We just put a piece of overtape in the box.
Oh, that's
There's
great.
overtape in here. Use it if you'd like.
That's great.
It will last longer. As far as the adhesive and its performance, some of the things that created some of the allergic reactions on G6 that you may have read about, certainly I've heard about, those elements in the sterilization and the processes, that introduce that aren't included in G7. So we're confident we'll be better from that perspective as well. Half-hour warm-up. Everybody hates the 2 hours they wait for their sensors to start.
Right.
30 minutes now.
Oh, that's great.
You put it on, and 30 minutes later, it's humming and it's ready to go. New app. There will be a new app for this product. We've written a new app. We've included much of the analytics that patients really like to look at in Clarity. We brought some of that forward, and
And the
some new
new app
display type
integrates
things.
with other systems, like
The
other
new app,
companies?
well, the app, our current app never integrated with other systems other than Insulet will talk app to app. Typically, the way we integrate with other companies is they take the signal directly from the transmitter, or we have APIs in the cloud, and we'll have this for G7 as well, where the glucose data goes to the cloud, and then other companies can pull that data. So if you have an app you want to run that's ancillary to Dexcom, if you have an app you want to run that is some hypo predictor or something, you
So
can
like
get.
the Tandem insulin pump.
Yeah, and Tandem, their pump talks directly to our transmitter. They get the signal right from the transmitter. Rather, it can go to the phone and to their pump as well. Again, that's another feature of our current products, but emphasized again in G7. You can talk to our phone app and to the Tandem pump at the same time. Both of them will work. It's not like, most Bluetooth devices talk to one thing.
Right.
It looks like when you pair your phone in the car and it's paired to something else, and
Right. It gets
in the old days,
confused.
it used to be, yeah, no
Is
need
there
to get
also an
confused.
integration with smart pens?
We're working on that. G6 has been integrated with a couple of commercial offerings. G7 will be integrated. Their offerings coming from Lilly and Novo in the not too distant future, working with both of those companies and some smaller ones as well. So again, integration across the board. We think it's just going to be great for us.
Right. And we know that type 1s love CGM and they're sold on it, but you also have new data for type 2s. So tell us about
We
that.
we have some great data for type 2s. There's a study that came out. It's called Mobile. And it's a study we contemplated a couple of years ago, to whereby we took type 2 diabetes patients on basal insulin and gave them access to CGM for 6 months. And when we started this study, there are people who said, well, why did we do that? They just take one shot a day. It's not going to make any difference. It's not like our type 1 customers who take multiple injections a day or use their pump or whatever. And we firmly believed that CGM would be a great tool for these for this group. And our studies proved it absolutely is, with a full point A1C reduction on the average.
Wow, that's huge.
And very similar to our other studies. If the A1C was like higher than 10, it was a much higher A1C reduction as well. People need information to make proper decisions about their health.
And what was the requirement to be in the study? You had to be a type 2, you had to have a higher A1C that was at least 8.
The average A1C, I think, was around 8, the average, but there's some below 8. You had to have type 2 diabetes and be on basal insulin only, no multiple daily injections or pump.
I see.
And so it was a really good study, very well run, and the results were outstanding. It's gotten a lot of acclaim, and there were some surprised investigators, in all honesty, because but at the end of the day, it's just a different decision. Our type 1 patients and our type 2 intensive insulin using patients have to make a decision with the CGM readings about how much insulin they're going to take.
Right, of course. Right.
Based on what they eat. Whereas these patients, they're not making that decision every meal, but they are making, what am I going to eat? And what are the effects of what I eat? And what are the effects of my exercise regime? And what are the effects of my schedule? And things like that. And they're able to make adjustments to their lifestyle. And let's face it, if the adjustments you make to your lifestyle result in an A1C reduction of a point, there's tremendous value to that for patients and for everybody else involved.
Right. Especially the family who loves having their family member
Who loves
around for a long
who
time.
loves having their family member
Yeah,
around. You're
right.
absolutely right.
I know more and more type 2s that are using the CGM, and they're just, it's such an aha moment for them when they go on it. And it's,
Well, now I think about it, when you have type 1 diabetes, and particularly look at our customer base, most of our users, a lot of them come to us as kids. They get diagnosed, or even if they're diagnosed later in life as adults. The technology is so good now, they go to the doctor and the doctor says, you're going to be taking insulin your whole life. You need a CGM, and you go get it and you just become used to it because that's how you run your day. That's how you make your decisions. And
well,
then
you're
ultimately you
lucky if
decide
that is how, if that's the
you are
initiation for
lucky.
you.
But think about the journey for somebody with type 2 diabetes.
Right.
They start, you have pre-diabetes, your A1C is getting high. You ought to watch what you eat, you watch what you exercise. 6 months later, yeah, it's higher. We're going to put you on metformin. For a couple of years, we do metformin, but that's the only feedback you have is an A1C and
Right.
a
Three
metformin
months
pill.
later
Then
also.
yeah, yeah, and then we go to another drug and then another drug, and you haven't really engaged. And then one day you're taking insulin, and now you're on, as it progresses, multiple daily injections or a pump. And this is a 15-year process for some people, a 20-year process, a
Wow.
30-year process. And all of a sudden we introduce CGM, and wow, why didn't I have this before?
Right. It's,
And now that I have this information, I can do so much better.
I agree with you. I think when someone's newly diagnosed, if they give them a CGM and they can see cause and effect right away, it will change their behavior. It's
Oh,
just
it's a
that
huge
waiting
deal.
3 months to say, oh, well, it didn't really work out. I was, I wasn't as good as I thought I was, or my blood sugars weren't at target rate. Yeah, it's nice that you have that immediate feedback because I think, information's power and we can all make changes. It's like the gas tank,
Well,
is it low? Do you need to go and get gas? So it's similar. And
yes.
we're
And
conditioned in
if
different ways in our lives to do that. So it makes sense that if, right up front they prescribe that, then I think the outcomes would be even better for a lot of people with type 2 diabetes. Less complications, more
oh
engagement,
yeah.
people being more proactive. So I was interested
And
also in the, people write me for my Ask Nadia column, and they always ask me about Medicare and CGM. And so there are new eligibility requirements or,
so during the COVID process, Medicare relaxed their eligibility requirements and let people get access with diabetes, get access to technologies easier, because one of the comorbidities related to COVID was diabetes.
right,
And we saw over and over again diabetes patients go in the hospital, or even pre-diabetes patients who didn't know they had pre-diabetes go in the hospital, and glucose is going nuts. So CMS relaxed the requirements for Medicare patients during COVID. And as we've come out of it, a few of the requirements that used to block patients have been waived. The most significant one is 4 finger sticks a day. That if you're a Medicare patient, you had to document that you were taking 4 finger sticks a day to get our product and to get access to CGM. That's been waived now, because the reality is most people don't stick themselves
hmm.
4 finger sticks a day. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of pain. It's a lot of time.
And
And
do they look at the data though? I mean, do they look at the data as
well,
opposed to finger stick, and then we're using the CGM and their A1C? I mean, is there any kind of mining?
CMS isn't going through that type of process right now.
Okay.
I would love to, and I would love to take a look at, we have a data science group here, and that's one of the things I asked for. Could you get me a cohort of patients and let's track the journey? We don't have their A1C data because we don't have their medical record, but we can compute an estimated A1C from all their CGM values. Can we track that journey and see what type of reductions we achieve? I think that type of exercise in Medicare patients would be something really good for us to do. I asked for it a few years ago. I haven't seen it. It was just, sometimes we think and talk at the same time. That was one of my think speak moments. And I think everybody was thinking, oh, he's just thinking out loud. We can leave this one for a while. I'm going to go back
That
to
would be
that.
a great program to initiate,
I'm
just to
gonna
take
I'm
people
gonna
that
write
are
that down.
newly diagnosed and following them with a CGM. I think that would be a,
Well, or even just people new to CGM. What happens
yeah.
over the course of a year?
Are you making notes to bring that up again to your team?
Yes, I am.
Yeah,
I
that's
take
what I
notes.
thought.
I take notes all the time
I know,
because I
don't
find I
we
remember.
all?
I remember so, and then I get rid of my notepad at the end of its utility and put a clean one in and start over. So
Yes, but they do say you remember more when you write things down, so it's
I
always
remember
worth
so much
writing
more
it.
when I write things down. It really
Right.
is.
So you also had a program with Nick Jonas and his foundation. What was that about?
We did. It's about time in range. The measure forever on glucose health has been A1C,
Something you brought
and
up years ago at the ADA in San Francisco when I first met you, I think my first interview with you.
yeah, that's probably right because we've even shown in our investor deck forever, you can see two patients whose average glucose one will go like this up and down. And
Right,
if they spend enough time low all day, that A1C is going to be low when in reality they're completely out of control. And
right.
another one that's relatively stable and the A1C is the same number for both of them. We feel that the time in range is a much better measure for how people are taking care of themselves. And we believe time in range will be applicable for all conditions, type 1 and type 2, even as a predictor in prediabetes. If you're over 170 all the time, no,
Is
180,
anyone
I guess is the upper end.
180, yeah. Is anyone else talking about that? I mean, I know years ago
Yes.
that you brought it up at the ADA at the conferences, but is
Well,
it becoming more standard for people to look at that as opposed to an A1C?
ADA is talking about this as a measure. There are other professional groups that are advocating this as a measure. If you go, there's a website, When in Range, that talks about Nick's efforts and all of the
Mm-hmm.
organizations behind the Global Time and Range Initiative. I just think it's really important and it's better care. And it's not like it's going to be wildly more expensive. It's not. I mean, we're getting data, particularly from patients who already wear sensors. We're getting data from what they wear. We launched our Dexcom G6 Pro last year for physicians that we've made very reasonably priced for them to use as a tool within their, within their practices. We've also launched another product this year on the G6 platform that we call Hello Dexcom that gives patients the opportunity,
Oh,
physicians thinking about CGM,
we lost you for a
thinking,
second. Gives
did you
patients the
lose me?
opportunity to,
It gives patients the opportunity to try it,
I see.
to take it for a test
Is
drive.
that part of the sampling program?
Yeah, Hello Dexcom is the sampling program. That's what we call it.
Mhm.
That's the name. The sampling program.
And
I
who
mean, in the
qualifies for that? What's the criteria to be part of that?
prescription, doctor just has to write you a prescription.
And you can be
That's
type
all.
1 or type 2?
Yes.
Oh, that's great. Everybody loves samples. I mean, that's great because once you try something, you know if it works for you.
Once you try something, and our hit rate after somebody tries it is extremely high.
Mhm. Great.
This offers somebody information and experience they haven't had before.
Last question. What's on the horizon after the G7? You probably have lots of things that are in the
Oh,
pipeline.
oh my goodness.
Anything you can talk about and share with us that's not
You,
proprietary.
as long as I stay high enough up in the clouds, I'm okay.
Okay.
As we look at G7, what would people want in addition to G7? What features can we add and can we improve upon in G7 going forward? People would like a sensor that lasts longer.
Right.
So we're doing work to get to a longer life. So you're
So
using
beyond the
two of a
10
month,
days.
beyond 10 days, out to two a month rather than three a month. We are
Wow.
doing work to make the electronics more efficient.
Hmm.
So you make the electronics more efficient. There might be size thing. Everybody would like smaller. We think the G7 is a fine size, but if we could shave another 10 to 20% off, that would be great. We're looking at new electronic configurations. Given what's going on in the world with chips and everything, how can we have more options there? We are looking at sensors of the future. Excuse me, right now, that electronics is all in the button and everything that we have on your body. Is there something we could make that might even be more convenient than we have now that would be lower cost that patients would prefer? We're looking at several different software type experiences for our customers, and I can give you the perfect example. We've talked a lot about type 1 and type 2. Our type 1 customer base, a lot of them use insulin pumps, a lot of them are going to use these integrated solutions, and that is a very specific need. A lot of our type 2 patients don't necessarily feel the same way. So what experience can we give them
Mhm.
that will make their care more meaningful and have them engage with CGM and be healthier?
I think the
And if we're
sampling
getting
program is the answer, Kevin.
sampling is part of it. And then as you get into people on type 2 not taking insulin, there's even a different experience.
Right, that's
So I
correct.
think what you'll see over time, we'll offer numerous experiences based on the same hardware platform, but a different software solution that will be very helpful to those who engage with it. And we're excited for that. What we're learning is that we grew up a medical device hardware company, and we are making a transition to a consumer software company that has medical device grade reliability. And you know what? There's not a lot of companies who do this.
Mhm.
It's been another evolution in our internal development. It's pretty tough.
Oh, definitely. People with diabetes have been very excited about it for all the right reasons. It helps them
Oh yeah,
manage their glucose levels. Well, thank
very,
you
very
very much
much.
for joining us today. Look forward to
Nadia,
catching up with
thank
you
you for
next
having
time.
me. Hopefully next time we can do it live and together.
Yeah, oh, that would be great, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would. Have a
All
great
right.
day.
You too.
Bye bye.
I hope you enjoyed that interview. I look forward to our next one, and thank you for joining us today. From Diabetes Health, I'm NadiaAl-Samarrie.